The announcement hit the music world like thunder. A legendary guitar once owned by Elvis Presley was going up for auction. Not just any guitar, the one reportedly used during private rehearsals at the height of his fame. The same instrument that echoed through backstage rooms before historic performances. A piece of wood and strings that had once carried the rhythm of a revolution. Estimated value, £2 million. Within hours, headlines exploded. Collectors circled. Billionaires made quiet calls. Music historians called it a once-in-a-generation opportunity. But then came the rumor that changed everything. Two unexpected names were whispered as serious bidders: Ozzy Osbourne, Mick Jagger, rock royalty, two legends from different corners of the same storm. Ozzy, the Prince of Darkness, wild, unpredictable, a man shaped by rebellion. Mick, the electrifying frontman, calculated, charismatic, a symbol of rock sophistication. Both men had cited Elvis as a formative influence. Both had built careers on the foundation Elvis helped lay. But now, they were rumored to be competing for the same artifact. Was it admiration? Was it legacy? Or was it something deeper, something personal? The auction house refused to confirm names. High-profile bidders, they said. Global icons? That only fueled the fire. Social media debates exploded. Fans began choosing sides. Commentators speculated whether this would become the most dramatic music auction in history. Because if both men showed up in person, it wouldn't just be about money. It would be about status, influence, ownership of history itself. And as the auction date approached, one question echoed louder than the rest. Who would walk away with Elvis Presley's £2 million guitar? And more importantly, the auction hall in London was unlike anything the music world had seen before. Crystal chandeliers glowed softly above rows of velvet chairs. Wealthy collectors whispered in tailored suits. Cameras from international media lined the back wall. The glass display case at the center of the stage held the prize, the iconic guitar once owned by Elvis Presley. It looked almost unreal under the spotlight. A simple instrument, yet worth £2 million, maybe more by the end of the night. Then the doors opened. First to enter was Ozzy Osbourne, dark coat, signature tinted glasses, slow, deliberate steps. The room shifted instantly. Whispers traveled like electricity. Is he really bidding? No way, he came in person. Ozzy didn't acknowledge the attention. He kept his focus on the stage and on the guitar. Minutes later, another ripple passed through the crowd. Mick Jagger stepped inside, sharp suit, effortless confidence, calm smile, the presence of someone who had walked into arenas of 80,000 people and owned every second. Now the air felt heavier. Two icons, one room, one guitar. They noticed each other immediately. Not a glare, not a smile, just a silent recognition. Two legends who understood exactly what this moment meant. The auctioneer stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, we begin at £1. £2 million. A paddle rose from the left side of the room. £1. £3 million. Another paddle lifted. £1. £4 million. The numbers climbed steadily. £1. £5 million. £1. £6 million. The crowd was no longer whispering. They were holding their breath. Every time Ozzy's paddle moved, cameras flashed. Every time Mick raised his, journalists scribbled furiously. Was this about Elvis, or was it about legacy? The bidding crossed £1. $8 million. A soft gasp moved across the hall. The auctioneer's voice grew sharper. Faster, £1. $9 million. Do I hear two? Ozzy leaned forward slightly in his chair. Mick remained still, almost too still. £2 million. The room erupted in murmurs. £2 million for 6 strings and a body of polished wood. But it wasn't just wood. It was history. It was influence. It was the sound that helped shape modern rock. The auctioneer scanned the room. Do I hear £2? $1 million. A pause, then a paddle lifted, slowly, deliberately. The tension snapped like a guitar string pulled too tight. The battle had officially begun, and everyone in that room realized one thing. Neither legend had come here to walk away empty-handed. The room no longer felt like an auction. It felt like a stage. The bid had just crossed pound 2. 1 million, and the air inside the hall tightened with every breath. The iconic guitar once owned by Elvis Presley sat beneath the glass, glowing under white light. No longer just an instrument, but a symbol. A symbol of origin, of dominance, of who carried the true spirit of rock forward. Across the room, Ozzy Osbourne adjusted his glasses slightly. His posture was calm, but his jaw tightened just enough for those watching closely to notice. On the opposite side, Mick Jagger remained composed, legs crossed, fingers resting lightly against his bidding paddle. Two different energies. Ozzy raw, unpredictable, forged in chaos. Mick calculated, magnetic, born for the spotlight. The auctioneer's voice echoed, pound 2. 15 million, thank you, sir. A subtle shift passed through the crowd. This wasn't casual collecting anymore. This was personal. Whispers began traveling between rows of velvet chairs. Didn't Ozzy once say Elvis changed his life? Jagger has called Elvis the blueprint for rock performance. Maybe they both think they're the rightful heir. The tension wasn't loud. It was silent, heavy, the kind of silence before thunder. Ozzy's mind drifted back to a teenage bedroom, a small radio crackling with early rock and roll. Back to the first time he heard Elvis's voice, rebellious, dangerous, unapologetic. That voice had told a young Ozzy something powerful. You don't have to fit in. Across the hall, Mick's thoughts weren't so different. He remembered studying Elvis's stage presence. The hips, the charisma, the way he commanded a crowd without asking permission. That wasn't just music. That was control, and control was everything. Pound 2. 2 million. The auctioneer called out. A sharp inhale rippled across the audience. Phones were no longer discreet. Cameras were fully raised now. Every bid felt like a headline. Ozzy leaned toward his assistant and whispered something brief. Moments later, his paddle rose again. Pound 2. 25 million. The crowd stirred louder. Mick finally shifted in his seat. For the first time, he looked directly at Ozzy. Not aggressive, not friendly, measured, evaluating. Was this about admiration, or was it about proving something? The auctioneer didn't slow down. Pound 2. 3 million. A gasp. Collectors who had entered confidently earlier now sat back in defeat. The battlefield had narrowed to 2. Only 2. The energy between them felt older than this room. Decades of parallel careers. 2 men who had ruled stages across continents. 2 men who had heard the same origin story and built empires from it. And now they were fighting over the artifact that started it all. A reporter near the back whispered into her microphone, "This has turned into more than an auction. It feels like a silent war for rock history itself." Ozzy's fingers tapped lightly against the armrest, not nervous, focused. Mick's lips curved slightly, almost amused, almost intrigued. The auctioneer raised his gavel slightly. "Do I hear pound 2? 35 million. A pause, longer this time, long enough for the entire room to feel suspended in air. Then a paddle lifted again, but whose? Cameras snapped wildly. Journalists leaned forward. The rivalry that had once lived only in fan debates was now unfolding in real time. And everyone watching realized something chilling. This wasn't about owning Elvis's guitar anymore. It was about who deserved to carry his legacy forward. And neither legend looked ready to surrender. The bid now stood at pound 2. 35 million. The auctioneer's gavel hovered midair, but no one in the room dared to breathe. Under the spotlight, the guitar once owned by Elvis Presley seemed almost alive, polished wood reflecting the tension unfolding around it. Across the hall, Ozzy Osbourne slowly lowered his paddle onto his lap, not in defeat, in thought. On the opposite side, Mick Jagger adjusted his cuff calmly, his expression unreadable. The silence stretched longer than it should have. Then Ozzy did something unexpected. He stood up. The movement alone sent a ripple through the crowd. Cameras instantly turned. Reporters leaned forward. Security shifted subtly near the walls. Ozzy didn't raise his voice. He simply spoke low, steady. but strong enough for the front rows to hear. Some things, he said, eyes fixed toward the stage, aren't meant to disappear into private collections. The room froze. It wasn't a direct accusation, but it wasn't neutral either. Mick looked up slowly. A faint smile touched his lips, not mocking, but sharp. He rose from his seat as well. If something is respected properly, Mick replied evenly, it doesn't matter where it lives. A murmur surged through the audience. This was no longer subtle. The rivalry had stepped into the open. Ozzy tilted his head slightly. Respect isn't about possession. Mick met his gaze. Nor is it about theatrics. The words were controlled, polished, almost diplomatic, but the meaning underneath was electric. The auctioneer cleared his throat nervously, unsure whether to interrupt or let the moment play out. Collectors whispered frantically. Did he just call him out? This is bigger than the money. It's about legacy. Ozzy's voice hardened slightly. Elvis didn't just make music, he said. He changed culture. That kind of history shouldn't be locked away. Mick responded without hesitation. And it shouldn't be turned into performance either. Gasps. The tension now felt visible, like heat rising between them. Two men shaped by the same inspiration. Two legends who had both built empires from the blueprint Elvis left behind. But their philosophies were different. Ozzy, rebellion, chaos, raw authenticity. Mick, strategy, control, timeless image. The guitar sat silently between them like a trophy in a gladiator arena. The auctioneer finally stepped forward. Gentlemen, he said carefully, do we have a bid of £2? 4 million. For a split second, neither man moved. Then Mick raised his paddle, £2. 4 million. The number hit the room like a thunderclap. Cameras exploded in flashes. Ozzy stared forward, unblinking. This was no longer about affordability. Both men could afford it. This was about principle. Ozzy slowly lifted his paddle halfway, paused, lowered it again. The crowd leaned forward in disbelief. Was he backing down, or preparing something bigger? Mick remained standing, but his confident posture softened slightly. He hadn't expected resistance like this, not philosophical resistance. The exchange hadn't been loud. It hadn't been dramatic shouting, but it had revealed something deeper. Two competing visions of what it means to protect history. The auctioneer raised the gavel again, £2. 4 million once. Ozzy's fingers tightened against the paddle. £2. 4 million twice. The entire room felt suspended in a single heartbeat. The rivalry had finally surfaced not through insults, but through ideology. And everyone watching knew. The next move wouldn't just decide who owned the guitar. It would decide whose vision of legacy would win. £2. 4 million twice. The auctioneer's voice trembled slightly as he raised the gavel. Every camera in the room was pointed at two men standing on opposite sides of history. On one side, Ozzy Osbourne, still, unreadable behind his tinted glasses. On the other, Mick Jagger, composed but no longer relaxed. And at the center of it all, the guitar once owned by Elvis Presley. The room felt suspended in time. £2. 4 million await. The word cut through the hall like a sharp chord. Ozzy stepped forward slightly, not aggressively, deliberately. Gasps rippled through the audience. Was he about to outbid again? Was this about to explode into £2? 5 million, £3 million. But instead of lifting his paddle, Ozzy did something no one expected. He lowered it completely and shook his head. A stunned silence followed. The auctioneer froze mid-motion. Mick blinked just once, surprised. Ozzy spoke calmly, his voice steady. This was never about winning. Murmurs erupted instantly. Reporters leaned closer. Cameras zoomed in. Ozzy continued. It was about making sure this doesn't disappear. The words hung heavy in the air. For a moment, Mick didn't respond. He studied Ozzy carefully, as if reassessing everything that had happened over the last 20 minutes. The rivalry, the tension, the subtle accusations, and then something shifted. Mick slowly lowered his paddle. As well, the auctioneer looked confused. Sir, your bid stands at £2. 4 million. Mick nodded. Yes, it does. He turned not to the auctioneer, but to Ozzy. You think I came here to hide it? Mick asked quietly. The room went silent again. Ozzy didn't answer. He simply held his gaze. Then Mick did something that changed everything. He stepped forward toward the stage microphone. "If I win this guitar tonight," he announced, voice now clear and amplified, "it won't belong to me." Shock swept through the audience. "It will be placed on public display, where fans, real fans, can see it. Not locked away, not traded privately. Preserved." A wave of whispers exploded. Journalists began typing furiously. Ozzy's expression softened slightly. Mick continued, "Elvis belongs to the world." For the first time all evening, tension cracked. This wasn't ego. It wasn't ownership. It was guardianship. Ozzy nodded slowly. Then, unexpectedly, he stepped toward the microphone too. "I pushed the bidding," he admitted, "because I needed to know that whoever took it understood that." The confession stunned the room. "You don't protect history with money," Ozzy added. "You protect it with intention." Silence, then applause. Soft at first, then louder. What had begun as a rivalry was transforming into something else entirely. Respect. The auctioneer, regaining composure, cleared his throat. "Pound 2. 4 million, going once." This time no one interrupted. "Going twice." Ozzy remained still. Mick stood firm. "Sold." The gavel struck. The room erupted not with rivalry, but with astonished admiration. Mick had technically won, but neither man looked victorious. Instead, they walked toward each other slowly. For a second, it felt like the entire music industry was watching in one frozen frame. Then Ozzy extended his hand. Mick shook it. No words, just mutual understanding. The crowd captured it all, the handshake, the nod, the quiet exchange. What the world expected to be a dramatic fight over Elvis's pound 2 million guitar had turned into something far more powerful. Two legends choosing legacy over ego, and the story wasn't over yet. The applause inside the auction hall slowly faded, but the tension didn't disappear. It transformed. Backstage, reporters crowded behind velvet ropes, microphones raised, cameras flashing nonstop. Headlines were already being drafted. Rock legends clash over Elvis' guitar, but the truth, it was deeper than that. Moments after the sale was finalized, Mick Jagger stepped into a private media room. The pound 2. 4 million receipt meant nothing compared to the statement he was about to make. He adjusted his jacket, calm as ever. "I didn't bid to compete," he said plainly. "I bid to protect." The room quieted instantly. He continued, "Elvis changed everything. Stage presence, performance, freedom. If something that powerful ends up in a private vault, it loses its voice." Meanwhile, in a separate interview space, Ozzy Osbourne sat under softer lights, his expression reflective. "I needed to be sure," Ozzy admitted. Not that he could afford it, but that he understood it. A reporter asked, "Understood what?" Ozzy didn't hesitate. "That this isn't merchandise. It's memory." The word spread across social media within minutes. Clips of the auction exchange were already going viral. Fans debated whether the tension had been real or strategic. But behind the scenes, the truth was surprisingly simple. Both men had been teenagers once. Both had felt the shockwave of hearing Elvis Presley for the first time. For Ozzy, it was rebellion. For Mick, it was command. For both of them, it was permission to be louder, freer, bigger than the world expected. This wasn't about pride. It was about gratitude. A senior curator from a major music museum stepped forward during the press briefing and confirmed the twist that sealed the night. The guitar will be displayed in a rotating international exhibition, accessible to the public. Gasps of approval followed. Not hidden, not sold, not flipped for profit. Preserved. A journalist asked Mick, "Did you and Ozzy plan this?" Mick smiled faintly. "No." Then added, "But we both knew what was at stake." Across the hall, Ozzy was shown a clip of Mick's announcement on a monitor. He watched silently, then he nodded once. "That's all I wanted," he said quietly. The so-called fight was never about ownership. It was about responsibility. Two different personalities, two different philosophies, but one shared belief. Legends don't hoard history, they protect it. And as news outlets reframed their headlines from rivalry to respect, the world began to understand something rare. Sometimes what looks like conflict is actually conviction. By the next morning, the story had exploded worldwide. Clips from the auction flooded social media feeds. News anchors replayed the tense exchange. comment section filled with debates, praise, and disbelief. What was supposed to be a dramatic bidding war between Ozzy Osbourne and Mick Jagger had transformed into something far bigger. It had become a moment about legacy. Headlines shifted quickly. Rock icons turn rivalry into respect. Pound 2. 4 million guitar to be displayed publicly. Elvis's legacy protected by the very legends he inspired. At the center of it all was the guitar once owned by Elvis Presley, no longer just an auction item, but a symbol of unity across generations of rock. Within days, the official announcement was made. Guitar would begin a global exhibition tour, starting in London, then traveling to major music museums across the United States and Europe. Fans wouldn't just see it behind glass, they would see the story attached to it, the story of Elvis, and now the story of that unforgettable night. When Mick appeared at a press event to confirm the exhibition details, he didn't talk about the money. He didn't talk about winning. He talked about influence. Every artist stands on someone else's shoulders. He said, "This is our way of saying thank you." Across the ocean, Ozzy released a short statement that spread just as quickly. Legends don't compete over history. They carry it forward. The internet loved it. Hashtags trended for days. Musicians posted tributes. Younger artists shared clips of Elvis performances, crediting him for shaping modern music. Perhaps the most powerful moment came weeks later at the exhibition's opening night. A small boy stood in front of the glass display, staring at the guitar in awe. His father pointed to a nearby plaque that explained how two rock legends had ensured it remained accessible to the public. "That's what respect looks like," the father said quietly, and that was the real legacy moment, not the pound 2. 4 million, not the headlines, not even the handshake. It was the reminder that greatness isn't about possession. It's about preservation. What began as tension turned into tribute. What looked like rivalry became responsibility. And in the end, the guitar didn't belong to Ozzy. It didn't belong to Mick. It belonged to the world. If you believe legends should protect legends, type rock in comments and subscribe for more powerful, untold stories from music history.